afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing to spend your afternoon here with us. For those who don't know, I'm Patricia Faber, and I do a podcast show to help people maximise property value. It's called Maximising Property Values. It's on all the popular platforms, so all your listening platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, Audible, all of them. That, however, used to be a monologue. But since the middle of November of last year, I've added a guest series, and my guest today is Dr. Elizabeth Eyitayo. We are going to get to know Elizabeth a little bit better, a little bit more. And if you don't know her at all, you'll get to know her today. So, who is Elizabeth? She is a general practitioner. She's a personal finance expert and founder of Medics on Fire. So, what is Medics on Fire? It's a social and educational initiative designed to help healthcare professionals achieve financial independence and so that they can retire empowered. She helps healthcare professionals sort out their personal finances and create multiple streams of income while they're working. Elizabeth, welcome to Maximising Property Values. Now, before we go into your main property activities and your Medics on Fire stuff, let me ask you your two questions. You've only got two. I thought I'd be kind and not make them three. So, for people who are new to this show, I ask all my guests 2 or 3 questions, and they don't know what I'm going to ask them. And that, for me, is part of the fun. um, so, your questions today are these. So, let me do number 1, and then I'll let you answer, then I'll do number 2, because some people say they can't remember. I'm sure you will, but I just thought maybe I am being a bit unfair, asking both, in one go and expecting people to answer them and remember the next one. So, your first one is this. What's the most disturbing thing that you've experienced as a GP? So clearly these are non-property ones, both of them. You can't answer to do with property, but I think your question is so direct anyway, I don't think you'd be able to weave property into it. So that's your first question.
Wow, that is a big question. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much, Patricia, for having me on this Clubhouse session and also your podcast. I'm really excited for it. I'm looking forward to the property questions now. So what's the most disturbing thing that I have experienced? And I'll try and share without being too, giving away too much, of course. As healthcare professionals, we still have to think about managing confidentiality, not because our audience or our patients will ever be on sessions like this or could be, but it's just good just to maintain that air of mystery around some of the things that we hear and we learn from people. I think one of the things that I've got to say as a caveat is, as healthcare professionals, we always, as much as possible, operate from a non-judgmental position. So we are privileged to hear and to see and to become privy to some of the most, sometimes the worst sides of human nature. And if I can make it topical, for example, if you see a very, very popular case that's going on around sexual abuse right now, for example, allegations, shall I say, of sexual abuse, we get to see some of these things on a very, very human, very personal level when we meet with either the patients or even the alleged or confirmed abusers of cases. So I would definitely say, for me personally, I think the most disturbing things that I have experienced in my career would have to be some of the work that we did around child protection. So actually, I wanted to be a pediatrician for many years. When I was when I first started my medical career, from when I was 10, I wanted to become a doctor, and that's when I wanted to start. That's when I made a decision I was going to do pediatrics. I literally made plans during that time to even work in the US, was one of my dreams, and I did my electives in the US. But actually, a really challenging part of that for me was the child protection element. So that was all different forms of abuse, whether or not it was neglect, whether it was emotional abuse, whether or not it was a sexual abuse. And of course, when I think of it, there are particular cases that I can think of even now as I'm sharing with you, even now that I can reflect on. That really, those cases that just stay with you and really, really worry you and concern you. And then fast forward many years later, did a little bit of psychiatry, sorry, and as part of that, you might sometimes have to cover the forensic psych wards, where these were people who were had already been convicted of all sorts of crimes, but they required medical care, clinical care, and they had mental health issues, so they might have to be in the specific forensic ward rather than in the prison. And again, sometimes when you sit with some of these individuals and you hear some of the things that they had done and some of the ongoing thoughts, I think for me, these will be some of the most disturbing. And I think that's probably the level of detail I might want to share so it doesn't become much more salacious and more gruesome than it needs to be. But amazing question, Patricia. Amazing. Thank you.
Oh, gruesome and salacious. That's what I was aiming for. No, honestly, thank you. Thank you. I completely get that. And that is actually also very good because at the same time, it would have been awkward if you'd shared something which then stayed with the listeners forevermore. And if I may actually, and I think I can do this on behalf of everyone in the room and other people who are going to be listening to this afterwards. Do you know what, you guys, thank you so much for what you do for us, all you medics, all you people in the NHS. We really, really, really appreciate what you do, putting yourselves in harm's way every day, all the time, just in order to make sure that we are, kept healthy and we are kept safe. So thank you. Thank you. Right, now, question number 2. What is the most heartwarming thing that you've experienced as a GP?
Oh, again, another amazing question. And I almost want to think about it because so many experiences come to mind. So many experiences. So thank you so much for your thanks on behalf of healthcare professionals. I think before the pandemic, so again, we do a job where genuinely we're not seeking for the thanks. And I'm not saying that because we're these wonderful people, but actually, you're trained to do it. For many of us, you're proficient in doing it. You do genuinely enjoy doing it and you do genuinely care about people. But I think with the pressures and the stresses of the pandemic, I will be honest. I've shared this before in one of my communities. I had my appraisal last September, and it was a really interesting appraisal because we talked about the impact of the pandemic, and I remember sharing with him some of the changes that we've noticed in patient behavior towards us in the healthcare system. And I will be honest, it's been really, really challenging. But again, as a healthcare professional, you understand sort of why, because the pandemic has happened to all of us. So patients have felt it, the system has felt it, and 100% we've felt it. I think it's hard to choose the most heartwarming because one of the good things about general practice is that you follow people from cradle to grave, is the phrase that we say, and even beyond. And you follow generations of people. So you think about someone like myself who's only been a GP for like a decade. So you're following people from cradle to grave, and you are walking with people along that journey as they develop themselves. They plan to have their families, they plan to have their homes. So some of the heartwarming things I can think of beyond kind of like the cards and the gifts that you get from patients, which are really sweet. I can think about specific patients who've made the effort to come back to you, and just really kind of give you something. So let's say, I'm just trying to think of a specific example. So let's say I remember a lady, as a result of sorting out her council issues, which wasn't really, it's not within our remit, but she had been having so much challenges and she needed letters done, etc., etc. And as GP, you're both counsellor, you're doctor, you're medic, you're social worker sometimes. And I remember you're even sometimes advisor on relationships. And I remember her coming in and bringing like a little necklace, bring like a little necklace. I couldn't accept it only because I didn't know anything about how, and it was such an odd gift for her to bring. But she bought it accompanied with a card, and it was just so amazing, just what she wrote in it. I remember again another patient. So I used to do end of life. I actually have a postgraduate diploma in geriatric medicine, and I was kind of like end of life lead and also cancer lead for many years in some of my roles. And again, I remember a patient coming who not many people had listened to, or she didn't feel heard. And she was one of those patients that in medicine, I won't use the actual term we use, but that others use, but basically they think they have something wrong with them, and they come with a lot of different things. So, by the time they walk through the door, the doctor is a bit like, oh, apprehensive about what this patient is going to come with. And she's come with this for like several years, and she happened to turn up on my doorstep. And just based on the history, etc., just as a clinician, I'm sure any other clinician would have done it, but I think it was just perhaps the gentleness and a bit of this was probably my first year as a fully fledged GP, and probably the gentleness and maybe just a bit of space that I gave to her. Fast forward, it turned out that this time round she did unfortunately have something wrong with her. So I took on her case with the practice, and I then became the liaison. I met with her husband regularly, had a conversation with her, and unfortunately, she passed away. It turned out to be a malignancy. So apologies, we should have maybe done a trigger warning from the beginning of it. But I remember I could still see it sitting with her before she did pass away, and her just being really, really grateful for the fact that this was in her own home, the fact that I took her seriously and we did investigations. And it was like 6 months between that diagnosis and then what happened, and eventually when she passed away. And then when she did eventually pass away, I remember her husband coming to the practice just to come and say hi to me and just to say thank you. And many GPs and many doctors will have stories like that. Already as I'm speaking, I'm thinking of a number of different stories of just overwhelming warmth from patients, and even colleagues sometimes, that really brings you, makes you humble for what you do. So I think that's probably what I would share for now. Thank you, Patricia. Great questions. Really great.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Do you know that lady that you've just spoken about? Don't we all just wish that our GPs were like that? I'm actually quite lucky. Yeah, I have to admit. But I know that there are lots of people who do moan about their GPs not listening to them, and people are then therefore very worried. There was a thing in the news, I think, over the last maybe 2 to 3, possibly 4 years, where there was this nurse. So she was actually working in the NHS, and she'd gone for investigations and she was told it was nothing. It then turned out that she also had what you've called a malignancy. I think I prefer that word. And just before she passed, she was saying that, I feel let down, and I'm part of the NHS, and this has happened. How many other people are not being, correctly diagnosed? Anyway, so, thank God that you were there to listen to her, because, you if nothing else, she had the peace of mind that people weren't looking at her funny, and people weren't looking at her as if she was crazy, and people weren't looking at her thinking, you hypochondriac. So again, on behalf of that woman, I have to say thank you. I'm one of these people that I'm very appreciative. Anyway, um, so let us move on to property and about making money and how you help healthcare professionals. So maybe even there might be people here, because I know that you're into property, so we will get to property people in the room. So don't disappear. But Elizabeth focuses on healthcare professionals because she has walked that path. She knows what they're going through, and she knows what the NHS is all about. So she is in a very good position to help people who are doing the same thing that she's doing. But what she's doing can apply to anyone. So, Elizabeth, how do you help healthcare professionals get to where you'd like to see them be?
great question. And I like the way you framed that question. And I'm going to just caveat it to say that essentially what I do with healthcare professionals is help them get to where they want to be. And my expertise or my focus is that they have independence, they have freedom, and they feel empowered. Now, if that's the healthcare profession, if that's a desire of a healthcare professional, for example, listening, or a healthcare professional that comes across my path, that's what I'm really, really, really good at. You know how this is my bag, this is my lane. That's what I'm really, really good at. So the way I do that is I focus on a number of different things. One of the first ones is really addressing that money mindset and their relationship with money. Now there are a number of different programs, etc., but actually at the core of it is that money mindset, is breaking those chains, breaking those ideas and those thought processes that we have embedded in ourselves, and breaking the ones particularly that are unique to us. And Patricia is absolutely correct. The things I share, of course, can apply to all people who are looking to achieve financial independence. But there are a number of reasons why I focus on healthcare professionals, not just because I'm one, but because I've been responsible in leadership for workforce of healthcare professionals, so workforce primary care, and also across different specialties within healthcare. And I've also been involved in leadership in commissioning, in also determining how we commission healthcare services within two big geographical areas. So I have seen the interplay between the personal ideas, the personal desires, the personal working conditions of the healthcare professional with the way the system works. And so I feel super privileged. And I think, I've done Clubhouse is a great tool for me specifically, because we've done some rooms where I've had, nurses, junior nurses, senior nurses, support workers, I've had doctors, I've had dentists, pharmacists just come in the room, and them just feeling like it's a safe space for me to just be able to talk about some of the challenges that I am having. And I think for me, that money mindset, that first piece is the thing that I tackle throughout. So sometimes it's explicit, but actually it's around the way I frame the programs that my healthcare professionals get involved in. Then the other element of what I do, and then there's a third. So the second element of what I do is about giving you education and empowerment around your personal finance. So things around budgeting that you would expect, things around understanding your pay, things around understanding your income, things around understanding your working conditions and how that fits into your pay. We're doing this month, for example, tax, and just keeping it super, super simple. One of the things for us as healthcare professionals is because we know so much, we are experts in our field, in the area of what we know. We have literally human lives in our hands, and that is genuinely true. But this is an area where we don't necessarily get the education, and sometimes we don't get the support. So therefore, it can feel a little bit daunting to ask for the help. It can feel a bit daunting to ask the questions, to say, well, actually, I don't know this. And so there's something really powerful about creating a space where people can get that education and empowerment. So whether or not that's from myself directly or from experts that I bring along to be able to share some of that. And then the third thing I do, of course, is the doing. So I know there's some of my clients in the audience on Clubhouse right now. They know me. We don't just consume education. We don't just consume content, consume knowledge, because we're very good at being educated on stuff. We're very good at learning. We're very good at taking things in. And there is a principle in medicine where it says, see one, do one, teach one. So when we were training in medical school, you would see so for example, let's say it was taking blood, for example. So you would see it being done, you see it being modeled in front of you. Somebody would do that activity in front of you. Then you would do it. So you'd learn how to do it and you would do it. And then eventually, once you get better at doing it, you were encouraged to teach someone else to do it as well. You were encouraged to show someone else how to do it, because then that helped you to embed that training. So one of the things that I really try and do is not just to soak up knowledge, but then through my programs, I make sure that healthcare professionals actually do it. And then, of course, hopefully you then create people who are financially independent and can then encourage other people and grow the community well. So I hope that answers your question, Patricia.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Thank you very much. Yep. So see it, do it, teach it. Boom. I love that. Love it, love it, love it. Right. Property, 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 property. Right. So tell us, Elizabeth, what are you doing right now? I'm going to ask you some more questions, but let's start from now and then we'll work our way backwards.
I like the way you ask your questions, Patricia, because you come in prepared as the person with what you want to say, and then I like it. Keep it to the question. So Patricia said now. So really, really exciting right now. So myself and my husband are, since we've been together, are building our portfolio at a certain pace, and that's really for us a target and a focus. So right now we've got one main development that we are working on. And then another project, and I suppose, when you hear people say terms around developments, refurbishments, etc., it's another project that I would really call a refurbishment. But I suppose because there will be planning involved, because we're probably going to create and extend, and we're going to do a couple of different, so rear and a side extension. We're going to change the whole layout of the property. So you could argue maybe it's like a mini development, but in my terms, I would call that really a refurbishment for my terms. So those are the two major things that we're doing, and then of course ongoing management of the portfolio we already have. So the development, Patricia is aware of this particular development, is a property that we're doing in East London. Awesome, because it means for this particular property we're using other people's money for it, and we even had the option to be able to create flats, which is a conversation that I had with Patricia earlier on when we were considering it, because we were going to go for an HMO, but we had an option to be able to go for flats for this particular development. But obviously liaising with the council and having different conversations about their needs, and again, my clients know I'm really, really super focused on, when you're looking to develop or refurbish or whatever it is that you want to do for a piece of property. I come from the school of read and understand what the local area needs, starting with the local council's plan, and then literally deliver what they need. Then it's easier. Then you get things approved, and then they say yes, because you literally deliver to them what they need. So we've had really close relationships where we've been engaging with them and talking to them and making sure that they are fully aware about what we are doing, and therefore we're not going to go down the route of creating something that they don't necessarily need, and then have to jump through the hoops of having that approved. So we're doing right now it's a HMO, so House of Multiple Occupation, all en suite but one room. That they're going to share, and we've got two kitchens in that property, and it's quite a big property. So it's gone from a 2-bedroom house, essentially to end as a really big 6-bedroom house, but potentially a number of different units can be self-contained, but we've just kept it as open as possible to keep within the rules, so we're not contravening anything with the local council.
Ooh, very exciting. Very, very exciting. So so that's in planning at the moment. So good luck, fingers crossed. Let's hope it all kind of like comes out as you expect it, and even better, even better.
So just to clarify, Patricia, so literally build is almost done. The plans in terms of actually just the property is all been approved. The only thing is now the class 3, C3 to C4 is literally what we're waiting for, which again, because we've followed, so this property, because of the space, like I said, it could have been kind of 3 to 4 mixture of 1-bedroom and studio flat. So if you just envision that space and the mammoth of what's been created instead of what was there before, that's the first thing. Then the second thing is, it actually could have been kind of like an 8/9-bedroom HMO with a good decent double-sized bedrooms, but because in that local area they were quite clear about what they wanted, and that was the reason why we've gone for the 6. But still, the space itself is huge when you actually look at the property. Thank you, I'm done speaking.
Wow. So from a 2-bedroom house to a 6-room HMO, 5 en suite, and one that
So sorry. So
doesn't have
yeah.
its
So
own.
4 en suite, and then
Oh,
the
4 en
2
suite, and
will be
then 2 to
sharing that
share.
one exactly.
Oh, right. Okay. 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 Great stuff. So, is that in a local authority area? Because I can't remember, that has an HMO Article 4, or is it just okay to change from one to the other?
Very great question. Yes, it's an Article 4 area, absolutely. But again, and this is the point I'm making. So I've got other properties in other Article 4 areas. So, and I didn't, and that was before I even knew about, the restrictions with Article 4 necessarily from an HMO perspective, because it was just about refurbishing at that time. So the Article 4 element wasn't a deterrent to us, only because we were having those conversation even from the point of purchase as to what will be approved. So that's part of the reason that kind of smaller HMO, that 6 bed, was a bit more amenable, is that the word, to the council, than it would have been if we'd been going for the 8 bed or the 9 bed that the property could have been. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is an Article 4 area, so definitely we had to go for planning for it.
Wow. Oh, do you know, I hope it all goes well. I hope it all goes well. So the build is nearly finished. What have you experienced in terms of, like, price increases? Because that's what we're all talking about. Materials have gone up in price, labor has gone up in price. Did that affect this development or not?
100% did. And I have to answer it because obviously things are still going on at the moment, so we're still having conversations, actively with our contractor and our lead contractor on the project. So I have to just bear that in mind. So yes, it did. And because of the other refurb that we're doing, spoke to our QS a few, I think it was last week, about just price increases and what to expect, for example. And he says between kind of July last year, because we were talking about another refurb, to now, or to the end of last year, he's seen price increases of about 20 to 25%, and in some materials up to about 30 to 40%. But most materials he's seen, really almost everything's gone up about 20 to 25%. So what this means in context, if anybody can really picture it, is that the build that you started last summer, whatever pricing you did, so we literally costed as much as we could, as much as was possible, every single aspect of this build. And we also went out to a tendering process to get builders to come in and cost for us as well. And then, of course, like I said, we spoke to the QS at the time to get an idea of the costings. So yes, 100% the price increase, we have noted that. We have noticed that. We have been able to mitigate against some of it, but it just means that you're eating into your contingency very, very rapidly. And that's the reality of it all.
Wow, thank you. I know it's just so scary, isn't it? And people. I'm not sure that people are working this into their 2022 costs, because we used to where it made sense to have a 20% contingency. I think now, if you're not allowing a 50% contingency, you might not get your work finished. So that's why I'm asking everyone who's into developments how they are finding, the price increases and how they're actually weathering it through. Okay, so well done. But yours is nearly finished anyway, so you're nearly across the line.
A- Absolutely. And do you mind if I add another thing, just for people just to see how scary the price increases
Oh,
are?
please.
So, for example, we got some copper, for the boilers, etc., because the whole plumbing and everything has to be done for pretty much the whole house. And we got that costed a few weeks ago. And literally, as I went to pick up something today, before this before this room, I had to pick up something and drop it off at the property. And the guy said to me, "Oh, it's gone up already. If you're going to get it now." But luckily, we have a quote, kind of like in place for a month. And we definitely asked them that question: How long could you how long could you hold these prices for us, please? And they did say, because we're just waiting for a few other quotes. But he said, it's increasing again. He's expecting about 25% to 30% from what he quoted us just about a couple of weeks ago. So that's how scary it is if you're not getting things on time. And I think one of the things that I would say, though, is this is the time that if you are looking to do development. So we've got some plans about how many developments we want to do on a yearly basis now for the next kind of 5 to 6 years. it's worth thinking about. So we don't have contractors on our payroll, and a number of other developers, who've been doing it for much, much longer. Like I said, for me, I would say genuinely it was more refurbishments. But again, maybe I'm just quibbling with words there. But anyway, but other more seasoned developers will probably have some of the contractors, so the builders, etc., under their own books. The other thing that they would do is think about storage. So we thought about storage right from the beginning, but of course, um, we were anticipating to have finished the project much earlier, so we didn't expect that we would be at this turn where we're definitely seeing those price increases. The other thing as well is, of course, having your own van, for example, so that when things land at the suppliers, you can go there, pick it up really quickly, and literally get that delivered. Yes, you can use man with a van, which we've used on a number of occasions, but there was just something about starting to have some of these things yourself if you're thinking about doing it long term, because you want to be able to get that stuff and just put it somewhere, and that's really, really an important part that I would say for 2022. Start planning for how you can keep some of these materials and the things that you need. Start planning for that from now.
Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Wow. Do you know, I'm loving this guest series. If you're new to the room and you've not been in, one of these rooms before, I have guests, to my podcast show. And the guest today is Elizabeth. Everyone who's been a guest on this series has just been amazing in sharing the real deal. No lies, no fluffing about, just exactly how it's happening. Now, I love your idea about, getting a van. Oh, I wish I could be that bold. And funnily, actually, because my husband and I, we used to hire enterprise vans. And if we needed to move things from one place to another, we'd kind of like let it all pile up, and then we'd get a van and then we'd move it. Um, and they used to cost about £56 a night. And the other day, when we literally wanted to move, we wanted to change over like a bed and a mattress from one of the flats. It was I think £178, and I was literally looking about a month ahead. Unbelievable, unbelievable. So it's not just the material prices, and it's not just the labor prices. It's everything that you might need, regarding your business. It's all gone up. Um, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that is we've got the bad news out of the way. So tell us about your favorite development. That will be, let's move it from bad news to good news, happiness, full of joy.
So I that's a fantastic question. Favorite. So I think, and I share this a lot, and I think I will talk about my very first property. And I say that because it genuinely is the property that keeps giving, um, even though right now I'm still doing a few things to it, but it genuinely has been the property that keeps giving. And I know I've shared it before, so I'll make sure that I can remember the numbers. But it was a flat, or it still is a flat. It's what was a 2-bedroom flat, but became a 3-bedroom flat en suite, and we're still going to do a bit more work on it. But it's a very small property, so that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't call it development, but it was a property that was bought that needed a bit of work at the time. So we're talking over, now in 2022, so maybe 12 years ago now. So it needed a bit of work at the time. It has capacity for it to be extended, but still have not even gone in to go and extend that property. And I've even spoken to the local council there, and they said, yes, we'll happily support you in doing that. Left it for several years because at that time I wasn't as wise, I'm going to use the word wise, as I am now. And interestingly, I went to this was again years ago. It's difficult to remember. Somebody invited me at that time to a fielding event, a fielding financial event, and they were sharing, and it was Jill Fielding then that was doing the session, and they were sharing around, if you have property, you can add value and you can refinance and you could do these things, etc., etc. And I had just bought that property and just let it sit there. I didn't even think anything of it at all at the time. After that session and after a number of different conversations, and my mum being a key driver of some of these conversations, I then started to actually see the value of the property, refinance it, and then over the years I've changed it around. I've actually done a proper refurb into it, develop the property itself internally. So this is all internal, and like I said, now it's a 3-bedroom ensuite property now, and again, amazing in terms of cash flow from it, over £1,000 a month just net profit, and even probably and some more than that really, and if I think about the refinance of that property has been able to allow me to release all of the money that I put in 100%, the total value. So I bought that property for £175,000 at that time, and has allowed me to be able to release money from that property to be able to buy other properties. And I think for me, if I'd known what I know now, I probably would have done all of that from the beginning. Do you see? I probably would have done that in the first 2 to 3 years of owning that property, but I didn't know. So I think probably maybe it took me 3 or 4 years or so. So it wasn't like it was delayed, but I didn't realize that you could do all of those different things with the property. And then over the years, I've just tweaked things a little bit and a little bit in that property. And actually, I focused on other ventures. And still now, when I look at that property, there is so much more I could do. So, for example, we were speaking to the architect about just before COVID, we were speaking to the architect. So the garden of the property is a shared garden with upstairs as well. But we would be able to get planning because of some of the other properties around ours. It's in Haringey. We would be able to get planning to basically build like a 2-bed bungalow in the garden of the property without infringing on the other property's garden, for example, or having any issues, etc., with it, to the point where the architect even told me, why don't you ask upstairs, could you buy their garden? You don't even need to buy the property. Could you buy the garden? This is the opportunity with this space. Your garden could build that bungalow. Their garden could definitely build another house or a couple of houses there. Could you buy it off them? So it's just, I think for me, still, that's still one of the best things that I have done. And I've got properties abroad as well. So for me, that property is still one of the best in terms of just rinsing and repeating. And there's still so much potential about what could be done to that property. I hope that answers the question.
Oh, amazing, amazing, amazing. So, with that property, I'm assuming you've taken out all of your money,
Oh,
or is my assumption
oh no,
wrong?
no, absolutely, yeah. So, and some. Yeah, so definitely the money I've put into it has come out. Definitely the value of the property, that 175,000, has been taken out from refinance. It's
Whoa.
more than
Oh,
doubled its value over the years.
wow. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So, when you are, helping health professionals, if they're interested in property, what sort of things do you advise them to look at, or what things do you look at together, or do you just do JVs, or did they do things on their own, or is it a mixture of all of those things?
Really, really good question. So, I have a very specific program at the moment. I have done before property investing mastermind with healthcare professionals, where we gave it education. I had a group of myself, brokers, my husband, who who is a both lettings estate and management agent in his own business and sourcer. And then I also had like a property tax accountant as well. And we used to have sessions together with them. But again, I found there was a gap between knowledge and doing. So, specifically in my accelerator program for healthcare professionals, I'm super intentional now around them understanding strategies in property and starting with strategies that will make them money from where they are right now. So, what I do is at the moment, I don't do JVs. We are definitely open in Medics on Fire in investing in our accelerators deals or even their businesses. So 100%, they do a session with us as part of that program where they have to pitch their business back to us, that they have created as a result of that program. And definitely I would have an interest in the future because of course you've walked through their journey, you've taught them how to do things, you've walked through the journey with them. And of course, being their coach, I understand where they are coming from. I understand some of their motivations and I can align with that. There is a potential in the future to be able to invest in their deals. But as part of the program, my primary focus is about them understanding the different arms of property strategy. I think sometimes when you go online, I think it's important to develop yourself, and I encourage people to follow property experts, etc., because it's really, really powerful. But sometimes when you go online and you consume that content, it isn't always put in a very structured A, B, C, D way that can be easily actioned. So part of what I do in my program is I explain the tenets and the principles of property investing and the different options. Definitely, I don't go to the areas that I don't do. So I don't do commercial to resi, for example. So I wouldn't necessarily talk about that, but I might mention it. But when it comes to kind of residential property, I talk about some of the tenets of the different ways that you can invest in residential property. And with my husband, with his business, we also do kind of rent to rent to purchase lease options as well, which I'm really excited about. So we can talk about different strategies, and then I give them an understanding of how you work out with your personal goals, your personal circumstances, your time availability, because my clients are also working, typically full time, or perhaps just about less than full time in their jobs. So how are you going to be able to marry that up with a specific property strategy? And that's what my coaching bit does, to make sure that you're able to create a plan for yourself that will work going forward. And I'm really, really pleased, because I believe we are achieving that for them.
Excellent. So, what do people tend to favour in terms of the various strategies that are out there? Because, like you say, there are numerous strategies, and you actually encourage people to choose the one that is going to be best for them, the one that they want, which is amazing. But do you find people actually kind of like veering in one direction more than another, or is it just kind of like are they equally interested in all of them? I don't know.
Oh, fantastic question. Fantastic question. So, absolutely. By the time I'm done, they're interested in everything. Yes, of course. But some of the tenets of what I teach or what I coach through, especially because I do a one-to-one with each client on their personal finance side and personal situation. So, some of the things that we do, some of the principles we discuss is to think cash flow first. So, think about a strategy that's going to get you cash flow. And because if you do that, then you can make it a bit more passive. You could put some cash injection, and then that cash then goes and makes you money. So that's going to be typically your buy to let strategies, for example, or really decent purchase lease option strategy, for example. The other thing we think about is then in terms of risk, we're starting from low risk to high risk, because a number of my clients might either be accidental landlords, so maybe they happen to own one property, or they are homeowners themselves, or they might not have any other assets. So when it comes to security and taking risks, it doesn't mean that they can't. And I always say it with a caveat, I'm not saying you can't go big. I'm not saying you can't go and do a £20 million development. All I'm just saying is that these are going to be the risks that you've got to consider if you're going to go for that. So as a result of that, we start with low risk to high risk. And then we start with the principles is around smaller projects compared to bigger projects. So, for example, I've had clients bring deals that are similar to some of the things that I have done. But you see, the challenges, you know this, Patricia, is that when they're thinking about taking on bridging finance, and then they've got to convert that bridge into kind of, what's it called? Convert it to, let's say, a
Fun.
mortgage, for example. Exactly, yeah, for a mortgage or something. Then there will be lenders that they might not necessarily be able to access, because that lender might want them to have already landlord experience, and some of my clients don't have that. Or the lender might want them to have a year's experience as a landlord, so they have to keep their bridging for a year rather than the average 6 months. So again, those things are the things that are put into place, and we talk about in my sessions, because sometimes again when someone just hears it off a stage or off a YouTube, etc., you might not get that nuance of, well, when you actually get to speak to the broker, these are the things the broker is going to have to tell you, and this is the access to some of the lenders you're going to be able to get. So the question, your real question was, what do they tend to favor? So a lot of it actually depends on how much availability to cash and how much time they have. So for a number of people, the purchase lease option is proven attractive because, of course, from a risk perspective, I mean, there are risks involved, of course, but from a risk perspective, depending on how that deal has been packaged and the agreement, not all purchase lease options are the same. But if all the different loose ends are tied up, so vendor can't change their mind, you've got a really, really good contract that tells how you can exercise that option at some point. And that's really clear from the solicitors. Everybody's done their paperwork and made it as tight as you can. The purchase lease options can really be attractive for them because it's a lower barrier to entry. One of the options that isn't always as favorable for my clients is the rent to rent option, for example, because the rent to rent tends to be a little bit more involved. They might need to then find the right deal. There is a bit more to guarantee, because then you are guaranteeing that rent to that landlord. So it might not be as favorable to them. And from their perspective, if we can put cash into something, we'll rather put cash into something that we might want to own later on in the future. And I'm just trying to think. And then, of course, buy to let are always a great option. Buy to let are always a great option for anybody, because at least that's the vanilla, but we must not look down on the vanilla, because that is literally a passive. If you get a management company involved with passive cash flow. So again, I encourage almost all my clients to consider the management option as well. When we do our numbers, we always build in management costs, because again, I'm working with professionals who are working full-time or just about less than full-time.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Right. Okay. That sounds really, really interesting. And when you say purchase lease options works really well for them because they don't have to put that much money in, I'm thinking people listening to this might be thinking there's no hope for anyone else. We're talking medical professionals here. We're talking maybe like, GPs, consultants, doctors in the hospitals, registrars. If they're struggling to find money, who's no one will be able to kind of like find money. So Elizabeth, you are being a bit modest. So but it's lovely to hear how they think about things and how you actually help them through that journey. And anyone who might be listening to this, if you know of any medical professional that might be interested in property, you know where to direct them. To Dr. Elizabeth. So, okay, so we've spoken about what you do for in the main within your program, but how do people?
Sorry, Patricia, just to, can I just come in on that money piece, if that's okay? I'll make it really quick.
Yep,
So
definitely.
absolutely, and I think for me, and this is the bit where, like I said, it's not always easy for healthcare professionals to discuss. You are right, we are talking GPs. You are right, we are talking dentists. We are talking consultants, etc. So it's not just even maybe the junior member of staff. It is across the whole professional levels. But actually, part of the attraction for a number of clients for working with me is because I am intentional about talking about funding options. And I think that's again something that those people who are sharing about property or teaching about property must really talk about, that barrier to entry around funding, getting the money. There is a perception that people need a lot of money. And I want to be honest, even me, myself, um, using other people's money was a journey that I had to go on myself. So one of the things that I do intentionally, and we had a session last Tuesday, and then we had a kind of like a Q&A session last night. So we do 2 sessions a month. And the last Tuesday session, part of a good portion of that was around funding sources for your business or your property business, and really quite a lot of detail about some of the options and the pros and cons of each of those options for your for your property business. So that's sometimes what's missing for people, is for them to be able to know that they don't have to wait until they've saved up £110,000, 20, £50,000 before they could get into property. These are some of the things that you could do to get to property right now. And that's really something I'm quite proud of, actually. Thank you for highlighting that.
Hey, thank you. So people who are in the room or who might be listening later, Elizabeth's website can be found at www.medicsonfire.com. So that is medics, medicsonfire.com. Great stuff. So how long is this program that you've set up for health professionals? How, from start to finish, how long will it take? And then do you find that, what percentage of attendees are actually successful? I don't know if you have those kind of like statistics.
Oh, fantastic question. Again, really great questions. So I'm really, really super intentional about people's goals for the program. And so people know when they come on the program, you must take action. So 100% of people are starting up new businesses. I know there was one particular person in the first cohort who already had a business set up, but it wasn't focusing yet on property. So therefore, we just had to make sure she had those conversations to make sure that was set up in the right way, for example. In terms of the mindset shift, 100% of people are getting the mindset shift. In terms of getting deals, 100% of people are getting deals because I make you get deals from day one. So the program goes for 4 months, and we do 2 sessions a month. And we do a coaching session. So each session is about roughly 4 hours, sometimes up to 5-6 hours, depending on what we're sharing. So yes, we do go on a bit longer, but just because there just is that much to kind of share and go through, and each person is encouraged. So it's a combination of creating a business, and there are specific business streams that I focus on, property being one, online business being one. And so we do that in tandem together in this group accountability session, because it's important that you said to me you're going to do X and your group members remind you next week that did you do X. So for me, that's really, really important. So everyone is encouraged to go and source out those deals or work with a sourcer to get those deals or go and do viewings, etc. So I'm really pleased. I won't mention her, but I do have one of my clients. I do have a few clients. I have about four in the audience. I do have a few clients in the audience, but I'm really pleased with one of them. I won't sing you out because obviously this is recording is going to be shared other platforms. But I was really pleased, for example, when she said she had listed kind of 17 agents in her area. So you know who I'm talking about now. 17 agents in her area, and she has spoken to about 6 to 7 of them already about rent-to-rent options because of the kind of strategy, semi-independent living strategy that she has for her property business. And things like that make me super, super proud, because otherwise, if we're not careful, again, this is the theme of everything I'm saying, we're taking in information, but we're not taking actions. And it's about taking those actions, getting out there, speaking to those agents, or looking at those properties. So I encourage my clients, okay, when are you going to go on those viewings? When are you going to go look at those properties? When are you going to check out that deal if property is their focus? When are you going to come on Clubhouse? So I do the online business element of it as well. So you will see a few of my clients have popped up on Clubhouse and they're doing Clubhouse rooms, or they're doing Instagram lives, because now they begin to build their audience. And these are people who are working as nurses and doctors on the wards, but now they begin to build their side business into an actual credible business. So I'm really proud of you all, because I can see some of you in the audience. So well done, everybody.
Hey, and to those clients, yeah. Again, I'm really proud of you as well, even though I don't know who you are, because it shows how committed you are. You've left whatever you're doing today, and you've popped into this room to hear Elizabeth talk. That is someone who is committed to what they're doing. So that is what makes me proud of you. So now let us, to round up, can you talk about the easiest deal that you've ever done in property? So this is property now. The most simple one, the kind of like, really? Wow, I'm so lucky. That kind of deal.
Yes. Ooh, that's a tough one, because I'm a buyer of properties. So therefore, as you can imagine, purchases are not, I'll be honest, I don't think any of my purchases have been like vanilla routes. There's always had to be negotiation. But perhaps I can focus on this one that we're developing now, maybe. So this property was on the market about October, November, 2 years prior, for £450,000. because of the area it was in, a 2-bedroom house, and looked really lovely just looking at it. But I felt it was overvalued at that price. And then it was reduced to 420. So I was watching it, observing it. It was reduced to £420,000 in December of that year. I'm a lurker in December. I look for properties in December because sometimes people that were looking to make their sale as a result of December is that, people preparing for Christmas. For some reason, people take lots of time off over Christmas. So sometimes things can either sit there and you're not really getting viewings, etc. So I'm a really big one around December. I always look for property. I've done it for years. So around December, I looked at this property again and it had gone down to 420,000. I spoke to the agent and I was able to actually view it myself at that time. But like I said, the paper exercise, it wasn't really, I still did not feel like it was worth that amount. Went into the new year and asked the agent again, is this property still on the market? Yes, it is. And I said to him, look, we would consider making an offer. Remember, I'm a team, so I've got to still convince my husband that it's worth the value as well. So we would consider making an offer, but we think it's overvalued. And he said, well, the guy's looking for cash purchases only. And we thought, okay, fine, we can get bridging, we can go for cash. We did our numbers. We're really intentional and detailed about our numbers. And we ideally wanted to get it for 375. We did our desktop analysis. So we did all the reports. And again, because of my husband's access, we were able to have access to a little bit more information on things like Rightmove and Zoopla behind the scenes. When you're kind of putting properties out there, you get a bit more detail. So we were able to get all of that detail together and we made our case for 375. And we said, fine, we'll go ahead with the cash purchase if that's something that you were interested in. And he came back to us, the vendor, via the agent, and he was like, no, I'll do 385, or I think maybe 390 or 385, but I'm going to need it to be cash still. So we went back and we said, nope. We will do the 385, but now you're going to have to go for a mortgage sale. And even now, I don't even know why we added that on necessarily. But when you just want to get something. But honestly, we felt like it was a really, really fair price. We felt like it was really fair because there were other properties. There was one other property on the market at the 420 mark that was also a two-bed, but it was much more done up. And this particular vendor was making the sale based on the fact that it had some planning approved on the property. But from our perspective, we had already costed how much the build will cost us. And we knew it was going to be about 180, 200K for us to be able to do the build that we were planning to do on the property, because we'd have to go for several more rounds of planning. So we've had about 3 rounds of planning that have been approved already on this property. And now we've got this HMO plan that we're waiting for. So when we knew it was going to be a journey for us to be able to achieve what we wanted. And he came back and he agreed to the 385 with the mortgage purchase. And that's how we are where we are now. So I don't know, was that smooth? That's what I'm saying. I don't think most of the purchases for me have been smooth. That's probably the smoothest, I would say, Patricia.
Oh, it sounds good. But, this is what people are saying about agents. They are overvaluing properties because, from 450, clearly they didn't have anyone to buy it. They went down to 420 and you were able to buy it for, 385, which is amazing. So, I'm clapping my hands, for you in terms of that achievement. And that is actually really, really good. Oh, thank you for sharing that with us. Um, I personally, I'm all for, buying whatever you need to buy on the open market, because there's so much to be had on the open market if you know what you're looking for and if you know how to negotiate, just as you guys have done. Um, and I, yeah, I'm still clapping. I'm clapping silently. So for people in the room, we're coming up to 1 o'clock, which is when we normally finish. Um, you have been listening to Dr. Elizabeth Eyitayo, and she has been very, very generous with her shares, from the heart, completely honest. And that is what the guest series, the Maximizing Property Values guest series, is all about. So please do tap on Elizabeth's face so that you can follow her, and you can, tap on the bell icon on her profile so that you can get notified whenever she talks. And so for those of you who might maybe want to listen to this again, where can you find it? So it's going to be on Clubhouse for certain, and you will be able to find it on Clubhouse under either Elizabeth's profile, my profile, or Maximizing Property pound, the club, under the club's profile. And it's going to be released as a podcast on Wednesday. So a week today, on Wednesday, it will be released as a podcast. So, people, I just really want to say, thank you very much for, being here with us. And I'm literally just going to pin the link for the podcast again. So if you want to be notified when the podcast is released, just tap on the link above our heads. And then if you see your favorite listening app, tap on that and you'll be able to, maneuver your way to subscribing to this particular show. So next week, Wednesday, I've got a conveyancing solicitor. If you've got any questions for her, put them through to me before next week. So we've got Bushra Mohammed, who is going to be coming on here on Wednesday, and it's going to be interesting. Now, for Bushra's thing, I'm going to have to write my questions down so that I don't veer off course. I won't be able to just kind of like just completely relax and just ask, just go with the flow. I'm going to have to keep on track. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for doing this with me. And like I said, people, if you're not already following Elizabeth, please do tap on her face and follow her, because she has amazing rooms. And they're not just for healthcare professionals. They're the people that she focuses on, but anyone can benefit from her rooms. So that might be a good idea for people too. But yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you to everyone who has spent their afternoon here with us. And hopefully I will see you next week on Wednesday. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for having me. Awesome time. Thank you so much.